What moment made you say, yep, I'm definitely dead, but survived with no major injuries? I was a senior in high school, and the student club I was in organized an unofficial beach trip towards the end of the year. No teachers or official permission, leaving me and a few other seniors in charge of supervising everything. After a couple hours worth of fun, one of the other students came running up to me and said that 3 of the younger members of the club had been swept out by a riptide and couldn't get back towards the shore. Me and 2 other of the older students, all experienced swimmers, immediately went to go help them. My friends got 2 of the 3 kids in trouble and started guiding them parallel to the shore to get them out of the current. But the guy I went for was panicking, barely staying above the water, and started dragging me down with him almost immediately. I yelled for people to get a lifeguard and tried to keep both of us afloat, but after a few minutes, maybe 5, maybe 10, it felt like forever, I was getting exhausted, having trouble keeping both of us above the water, and I couldn't see anyone coming to the rescue. I started getting big mouthfuls of water and my leg muscles were starting to cramp up, and I remember thinking, holy shit, I might actually die right here, right now, as the current started pulling us further and further away from where everyone was. Thankfully for everyone involved, one of the students on the beach had flagged down a couple of surfers, who made their way out to where we were as quickly as they could and hauled first the younger student and then me onto the front of their boards and took us back to shore. I'll always be thankful and appreciative for those strangers who put themselves in the dangerous position of rescuing 2 drowning swimmers. Edit: as several people have pointed out, it's not uncommon for people to die doing what I did, i.e. swimming into the water to rescue a drowning swimmer without training or equipment. There are a few techniques for rescuing someone drowning in the comments that everyone should learn if they're ever in the unfortunate situation of having to use them. I should have used them, but I was 17 and not thinking straight at the time and almost paid the price because of it. I went out for a surf on a stormy day and thought to myself, no one else is out, those idiots. Before being held down by 2 waves after eating it on the first wave of the session. Was thrown down and held under, and while being tossed around, my leg rope wrapped around both my legs and one of my arms, so I was probably being held at around 5 feet under with only one arm free while my board tip is barely visible at the surface but floats vertical like a tombstone. Finally managed to catch a breath between sets before taking another 3 or 4 on the head and for sure just thought, well, this is it. No one's out, fishermen will find my body or my board. Managed to get my other arm free and got to shore very quickly and then avoided the ocean for a few days even though the waves were absolutely perfect. There's a reason no one was out, everyone else was 10 minutes down the road at another beach where the waves were smaller and cleaner. I was in an extremely similar situation, but it was at a comp. Held a meter or 2 under for what felt like minutes. I genuinely just pretty much accepted I was dead. I survived a car crash that wrecked my car. Rolled twice, landed upside down, learned the hard way that I didn't have airbags, or at least they didn't deploy. Did have my seatbelt on though, that probably saved me. Paramedic said he hadn't seen a wreckage like that and have it end well. Not even a hairline fracture. Rollover crashes look like the worst, but they're actually not, since all the energy goes into the car and gets depleted slowly. Combine that with wearing a seatbelt and you'll just feel a bit dizzy. The biggest risks are unsecured cargo and glass shards. People have been known to walk away from crazy rollovers, whereas people have been known to get severe injuries or even die from a small bump. It sure is a crazy world we live in. 1997 model year was when they became standard. They first showed up on high-end cars in the late 1980s, mid-tier cars in the early 1990s, and then everything else when they became mandatory. The 1997 safety regulations also required some other changes that led to the discontinuation of some car models, such as the Chevy Corsica and Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra, that already had airbags. Apparently airbag sensors are very picky. I was in a car accident a few months ago where my car was totaled even though it was a low-speed impact. My brakes didn't work right and I had enough time to think, are you freaking serious? I should be able to stop with plenty of space to spare before boom. The height difference between my car and the one I hit was just enough for my car to essentially slide under it and lift it, so my bumper was almost pristine, but everything above it was crushed inward, hood crumpled, etc. Everyone at the scene from the police officer to the tow truck driver commented on how they were surprised my airbags didn't deploy. The guy at the collision center said that they would have deployed if the damage were about half an inch lower. On the flip side, my doctors and physical therapists said I was lucky as hell that the airbags didn't deploy, because I have a medical condition that means that airbags probably would have caused some injuries. I had walked away from the accident with no issues, wasn't even sore the next day. Seeing rate of deceleration made me laugh because I had none when I crashed Lamau. It's been long enough where I can actually laugh about it. I was pretty pissed for a while after. I was only going about 20 miles per hour, if not less, saw traffic slow down suddenly, tried to brake. And all my car did was beep frantically. The car behind me had been tailgating me so closely that I couldn't even see his front license plate in my mirror, but he was able to stop just fine without turning it into a shit sandwich. No one at the official dealership collision center or the service guy I've known for 10 years could explain what the beeping was, and the wiring harness was unfortunately damaged in the collision. Got myself a new car from a completely different brand as a replacement because yikes. Still find myself getting a little antsy when I need to brake because of some idiot driver. Doesn't help that my new car has already had a minor electrical issue that couldn't be replicated because that's exactly what happened with my old car on multiple minor issues before it decided that brakes are an unnecessary feature. Well now whoops, what I meant was that they said they'd never heard of beeping noises when braking, and the few suggestions they did make were for features that my car didn't even have: proximity sensors, auto braking. They did say my tires and brake pads were pristine and all the fluid lines/levels were fine, so it wasn't a mechanical issue. This exact same thing happened to me last month. No airbags, rolled twice, entire driver's side of the car caved in. People who saw the crash were like, "You're alive?" Paramedic told me he'd never see a crash like this where the person could walk away. I literally didn't have a scratch, had to crawl out the window. I know a guy who had the same thing happen, but he wasn't wearing his seatbelt. Ironically, that saved his life, because the top of the truck's cab was where his chest would have been sitting up normally. He ended up laying across the passenger seat and didn't sustain any injuries. I'm glad you got out okay. No airbags sound scary. Me dad got into a very bad crash, wrecked the car good, and the only thing that saved my dad and my brother was the fact that they wore seatbelts. It was on a highway, and there was a traffic jam because up ahead there was an accident. My dad saw in the rear view a truck coming at high speed. It crashed into the back of a Passat TDI, bounced back, then crashed again. The truck driver was checking his fucking phone. He's completely fine, as far as I know. Years later we still haven't got a sentence. Fuck texting and driving. Had it not been for the seatbelts, both would fly out through the front shield. If someone was in the back rows, as there often are, they would be crushed to death. My dad suffered a break on his leg and his sternum, couple of broken ribs. My brother had bruises and bad arm pain. I added that to my big box of flashbacks because I was the one to go see him in the hospital first in the family because I was the closest. It happened near where I went to college. Christ, seeing him hooked up with wires was horrifying. Similar story. I rolled my car after hitting some black ice going around a corner and landed on my roof. Only injuries was some bruising from the seatbelt and a tiny cut on my arm from crawling through my window. If my car had landed on the other side of the road, I most likely would have been killed or at least seriously injured considering it was a 30 feet drop or more. I still cringe when I drive around that spot. Holy shit, same here except it was a van. Fell asleep at the wheel and when I jerked awake I jerked the wheel early morning on the highway. Rolled 2 to 3 times, landed upside down on the other side of the highway. Airbag didn't deploy, van was totaled, crawled out the window. EMTs were shocked. Just a few bruises and a small fracture in my shoulder. Similar situation here. Crashed my car while driving a busy highway at night, rain was pouring down and I lost control and started spinning. Car totally wrecked down. Incredibly I didn't hit any other car and luckily I was feeling good enough to leave my car by my own feet, no visible injuries or feeling pain. When the paramedics came to check on me and asked me if I was okay, I started crying. I hardly never cry, but damn, that "are you okay?" really hit hard. And fun fact about the story is that even if the car was totally crashed, my radio was still working. During the whole incident, Champagne Supernova from Oasis was playing. Can't listen to this song nowadays without shivering. Lol. Sorry for the spelling, I'm Spanish, smile. Same here. I ended up having to get stitches on my wrist. Rolled across the street from a Burger King. First people to my car to help me out was 2 siblings I went to school with in high school and hadn't seen in forever. 2. I need to catch up with them and see how they've been. My grandmother went through something like that. Same thing, car rolled, was a total mess, landed upside down. She didn't have her seatbelt on, she lives in a state where it isn't required, and the paramedics were amazed she didn't take any injury beyond a few bruises. They credited it to basically the car rolling around her since she's pretty small and the interior was pretty spacious. Wow, same situation for me. Car airborne, flipped sideways 2 or 3 times, car air landed upright. Car totaled. All 5 passengers perfectly fine. Worst injury was a small cut on the head. Same night, different location nearby, a carload of mates had crashed and died. No one understood how we were fine. My head was out my window smacking into the ground, grass, as we rolled. We were traveling 100 kilometers per hour, 62 miles per hour. I always wear them, but when I was younger I didn't. I crashed my car with 2 passengers in it. It rolled through a hedge and into a field coming to rest upside down. There was not one straight panel left on the car. I ended up in the area where the front passenger had been. He ended up in the rear area along with the other passenger. We crawled out the back window without a scratch on any of us. When the car was righted, we saw that the roof in the driver's corner had taken the worst damage and was crushed down into the driver's area. Had I been wearing my seatbelt, who knows? It didn't look survivable. I was driving on a main road and I guess someone wanted to left turn onto a side street so much that they just pulled out of their lane and drove down the wrong side of the road past several streets, speeding, coming directly for me, and I legit had nowhere to go but QA. So many cars were parked in front of houses so I couldn't even pull over. I just stopped and held my breath until they turned left. It wouldn't have been the most high impact crash, they were going like 45 in a 25, but fuck. It was scary how deliberate it was. Like they chose to drive the wrong way to find this side street. A few days ago I saw someone just about miss their exit on a motorway where everyone was doing 120 kilometers per hour / 70 miles per hour. Slammed on their brakes, reversed about 50 feet, indicated and took the exit. All of a sudden there are cars everywhere trying to not cause a pileup. I wonder if they're just an idiot or are malicious too. Man, Pillow Rock is no joke. Out of all the obstacles, that one always make the butt pucker just a little bit more. I ride with River Expeditions and have always had fantastic guides. I took my 13-year-old Dotto with me this last trip and he said he's never been more terrified and excited at the same time.